Hello and welcome to the first episode of Reason 4 for Beginners. And if you start a new file, you should have a mixer already up. If not, what you're going to do is press tab to look at the back of the rack, and you're going to have the left and right out go to the first two outputs in your hardware device. Okay, we're going to press tab again. And right now I'm going to create a subtractor synthesizer. Doesn't really matter what you create, just something to give you some sound. Next, I'm going to create the matrix pattern sequencer, which we'll be focusing on today. Now, these should be automatically hooked up, but if not, the gate CV is going to go to gate, note CV to CV. Pretty simple. We're going to go to the front again, and I'm going to minimize the subtractor just so I can focus on the matrix. So, there's a couple different sections, and I'm going to explain from left to right. Now we have our 8 patterns, and then A, B, C, D, 4 banks of patterns. 4 banks times 8 patterns is 32 total patterns that you can have. And right here is the pattern enable button. Obviously, if you have this disabled, it's not going to play the pattern even if you try to run it. Obviously, the run button is going to run the pattern. We have our key edit and curve edit modes. We're going to focus on the key edit for right now. We have our different octave modes, and that's going to change your octave, which means the notes that you have in the note matrix. Like if I put notes here, if I wanted to put notes above or below what I can currently see in this area, I'm going to go to the different octaves. And the tie is basically makes the notes longer, or it ties different notes together. And then we have obviously the note matrix right here. And then over here we have steps, which controls the length of the pattern, and if you'll notice this is getting shorter. We're going to leave it at 16. And the resolution, which changes, I'll just play the pattern to show you how it sounds. Now if I want it faster, twice as fast in fact, I can go to 30-second notes. If I want it half that speed, I can go to 1/8 notes. So most of the time you're going to use it in 16th note, so we're just going to go ahead and put it back to 16th. And then the shuffle pattern, which it only works for 16th notes and above, and I'll give you an idea what that sounds like. Okay, I'm going to turn that off again. Okay, so we basically went through the basic functions of the matrix. So we're going to clear this pattern, and I'm going to put one on every other 16th note. That's good for now. And I'm going to teach you a very simple scale that I learned in 7th grade that should help you if you have no musical knowledge whatsoever and you still would like to, make beats with reason. It starts at C, which is this bottom note here, so I'm going to leave those two there. And then it goes to D sharp, then it goes to F, then F sharp, then G, A sharp, and then back up to C. So if I play that, you'll get an idea of what it sounds like. Standard C blues scale. So that pattern's kind of boring, so we're going to add some stuff to it. So I'm going to add a trigger here, and I'm going to add a trigger here. Now it sounds like this. Still pretty simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click and we're going to go to alter pattern. Obviously that alters the pattern. So let's see what it sounds like now. I'm going to alter it one more time. See, it also alters the gate triggers, which I did not explain yet. Let me get to that now. A good idea is to have the first gate, and what I mean by gate is when the sound starts and when it stops. So imagine a gate opening up to let the note through. So you're usually going to want to have it start on the first note, just to give it a sense of a downbeat. So that's a pretty good pattern there. And so now that we have a pretty basic pattern, I'll get into some of the other functions. The tie, I'm just going to tie a couple of these together and see how it totally changes the pattern. So it changes the lengths of the notes a little bit. And I think now we can get into the velocity. Now, these gate triggers don't have to always be up to the top. They could be in the middle, or obviously if they're all the way in the bottom, then they're off. But we're going to change some of these, and what velocity means is not how fast it goes, but think of how fast you hit the key on a keyboard. So the faster you hit the key, the louder the note. So now that we've changed the velocities a little bit, and one more, let's see how it sounds now. The notes are just slightly different. So now that we've given it a bit of velocity variation, we've altered the pattern. Oh, and another cool feature of this, I'm going to start a new pattern. That's pretty boring. But if I right click and go to randomize pattern, it'll usually give you pretty crazy stuff. But I'm going to go back to our first pattern. Then I'm going to show you what the curve does. I'm going to stop the pattern for now. Now we go to curve, and now you can see there's no notes. And so if I do that, if I draw a curve, and by the way, if you hold shift, you can do this in the note matrix as well. You can draw a line, and it'll keep them all in order. So if I just do that, it's not going to do anything. And that's because we don't have the curve assigned to anything. So I'm going to expand the subtractor, and we're going to press tab, look at the back of the rack. Now I'm going to take this curve control voltage, and I'm going to set it to the filter frequency, filter 1 frequency. And there's two different modes. There's unipolar, and then there's bipolar. Unipolar only goes in one direction, in a positive direction, so it's going to add to whatever value you have. And then the bipolar obviously goes in two different directions, so you can add and subtract. And I'll just give you an idea. I'll flip it around. The bipolar will look like that, and the unipolar, will look regular. Okay, so now that we've connected the curve control voltage to filter 1 frequency, I'm actually going to turn this down a little bit. A little higher. So now let's listen to how that pattern sounds. So the filter's going to open up as it plays, and I'm even going to mess with it further. And do this one like that. So we have a totally pretty much different sounding pattern now, just from the little curve modulator. So that's pretty much basically what the matrix pattern sequencer can do. And some other keyboard shortcuts that are pretty useful I'll run through. I'm just going to let this pattern run. And you can either shift the pattern left or right by holding Control. And you can hit J or K. J moves it back, K moves it forward. Another thing you can do is you hold Control and Shift. And if you hit U, you can move it up. If you hit Control Shift D, it moves pattern down. So that's pretty much basically what you can do with the matrix pattern sequencer. And if I do another episode of this, which I probably will, I'm going to focus on the subtractor. And just so you know, this is not just a reason 4 tutorial. If for some reason you have reason 1, 2, or 3, all these devices are present and will work in earlier versions of Reason. But that's pretty much all for now, so I'm going to let you mess with some reason and make some beats with the matrix pattern sequencer.